What's up guys, my name is Joe. Welcome to the Dynasty Trading Room YouTube channel. Today we're going to be going through a 4-round Superflex rookie mock draft for Dynasty. Obviously the NFL draft just concluded, so we're going to go through all those landing spots, which ones I like, which ones I don't, and which players have risen and fallen based on what landing spot they ended up with during the draft. My rookie rankings have totally shaken up since it ended, so this mock draft is going to be completely different than rankings I've done in the past. So I'm really excited to go through all 4 rounds, break down each player and their landing spot, and why some players really rose and why some guys fell down my rankings. Before we go any further, don't forget to subscribe to get the best Dynasty content on YouTube. We're posting videos multiple times a week with in-depth analysis and film study, so don't forget to tune in, and you can stay updated on the best content in Dynasty Fantasy Football. Without further ado, let's dive into our first round. And remember, this is Superflex, so quarterbacks do have more value than usual. With the 101, it's simple, it's easy. We have Ashton Jeanty. He was drafted 6th overall to the Las Vegas Raiders. I think this is a solid landing spot. Obviously, he probably would have been in a better situation in Chicago or maybe even Dallas, but Las Vegas isn't a bad place to go. I think this can transform them into a run-first offense, absolutely. They also have some threats in the passing game with Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and now Jack Besh, so defenses won't really be able to sell out against the run against the Raiders, meaning Jeanty will have some space in the trenches. Obviously, as a prospect, he's elite. The contact balance is exactly what you're looking for. His speed is great. He has fantastic playmaking ability. We've seen him handle a bell cow workload. His patience and elusiveness is right up there with some of the best players in the league. So I'm really excited to see what he does this year as a Las Vegas Raider. He's my 101. Next to the 102, we have Tetairoa McMillan, wide receiver now for the Carolina Panthers. And let me tell you, this was one of the few spots in the top 10 of the draft where Ted could go and have a chance to compete for the wide receiver 1 spot immediately. Obviously, this year's receiver class in the draft was not as good as previous years, but Ted is still a very good prospect. I think pairing him up with Bryce Young is going to be perfect. Young now has a big athletic target in McMillan who can go up and get those contested catches and also has the speed and athleticism to get some serious yards after the catch. There's a couple other solid targets on the team that can definitely pose some competition for targets for McMillan early on. But with his draft capital being so high at 8th overall, I would be surprised if it takes a long time for him to become the team's wide receiver 1. Again, we've said it before, his athleticism, his size, his ability to make contested catches make him a great prospect, very worthy of a top 10 pick in the real life NFL draft, and I think he's worthy of the 102 in Dynasty rookie drafts. Then we have Omarion Hampton, who was selected by the Los Angeles Chargers late in the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. Hampton was my RB2 this year. I think he possesses an elite blend of speed, strength, and contact balance. He's also a very solid receiving back. And while the Chargers already have Najee Harris, he's only on a 1-year contract with not a ton of money attached. So I see Hampton, I think the Chargers also see Hampton as their long-term plan at running back. He is a fantastic prospect, and in a loaded running back class, he was easily the RB2 on pretty much everyone's big boards. The Chargers obviously thought so as well. Los Angeles already has a pretty strong offensive line. Most notably, they have Joe Alt, who was an early first-round pick last year at left tackle. But Hampton is going to be a fantastic running back. He has that power, like we said, to just run defenders over. A linebacker does not want to meet him on the second level. And he's also a very good goal line back. He has the power to punch them in from a few yards out for sure. And don't be concerned about the long speed either, because he has the speed to cash in long touchdown runs. So this is a home run pick for Los Angeles, in my opinion. I think he's the running back of the future, and he's going to be great in Dynasty. He's my 103. At the 104, again, this is Superflex. Quarterbacks are very valuable. We're going to go with Cam Ward, who was unsurprisingly selected number 1 overall by the Tennessee Titans. This was one of the few sure things in this draft class. He has a fantastic arm. He can fit the ball in tight windows down the field. He's a good improviser, playmaker, and I think he has a very high ceiling on him as a quarterback. Tennessee also made sure to get him some playmakers later in the draft with Elicia Manor and Gunnar Helm. Also, his college teammate Xavier Restrepo in undrafted free agency. With a solid offensive line in front of him, Cam Ward should have a solid rookie year. Yes, there's risk, but he's a very good quarterback prospect in my opinion, and well deserving of a top 4 pick in Superflex Dynasty rookie drafts. Next, we have Travis Hunter of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Obviously one of the most unique prospects of all time. He'll play wide receiver and defensive back. I believe the Jaguars have already said that they want him to play both sides of the ball, which is why he has flown up my rankings, because it wasn't a sure thing that he would play enough receiver to become fantasy relevant. But the Jaguars, obviously, they traded up to number 2. They gave up a lot, including next year's first-round pick. They want to play him on both sides of the ball to get as much value out of the pick as possible. Hunter was one of the elite prospects in this draft. As a defensive back, he has ridiculous instincts and fantastic ball skills that also translate to receiver. He's able to pluck a ball out of the air pretty much on any spot in the field, no matter if a defender's all over him or not. He could be one of the best all-around players in this entire draft class. Obviously, the draft capital's there, taking number 2 overall, and the Jaguars traded a lot to get him, so I expect him to be part of the offense pretty much day one. My big question is, how involved in the offense will he be if he's also playing defensive back? Obviously, he won't be able to play every snap on both sides of the ball. And the reason he's not my top 3 is because I don't know how much wide receiver to how much defensive back he'll be playing. Once we figure that out, I think we'll have a more definitive ranking of Travis Hunter. But for now, his skills just as an overall football player have him ranked in my top 5 for Dynasty drafts. I think number 5 in Superflex is a good spot to take him in here. This was a great spot for Travis Hunter to land. I think he could be their long-term wide receiver 2 behind Brian Thomas, and their top cornerback as well. Next up, we have TreVeyon Henderson, running back from Ohio State that was drafted in the second round to the New England Patriots. There were a couple reasons I really like this spot for TreVeyon Henderson. First of all, the draft capital is there. Early second round pick, he's going to be very involved in the offense because they were willing to spend that early pick on him. Also, we're going to see his role translate from college pretty similarly. He was in that Thunder and Lightning backfield with Quinshon Judkins at Ohio State. Judkins is more of a power back, while Henderson is kind of the big play home run threat. That's a decent receiver as well, but just a very dynamic player. I think New England may have plans for an Ohio State-like backfield with Ramondre Stevenson and TreVeyon Henderson. Stevenson obviously playing that power back role, and Henderson being that guy you get in the ball in his hands, he could have a 50-yard touchdown at any moment. This is a very high upside landing spot. I think New England's wanting to build around quarterback Drake May and give him as many weapons as possible. This is a step in the right direction for sure. And Henderson is likely going to fill a role that was very similar to his college days. I see his skill set translating really, really well. I think he's going to be an awesome running back, and 6th overall is a solid spot to take him. Next, we have Tyler Warren, tight end who was selected to my Indianapolis Colts. I'm super excited as a fan of the Colts to have him there. He was who I was hoping we would draft at 14, and he fell, so awesome pick. But on the fantasy side of things, Tyler Warren is going to step in and be one of the top receivers for the Colts immediately. He's a good separator. He's great at making contested catches. He's a very impressive athlete with that speed, with that power he plays with. And I'm hoping his ability as a blocker will keep him on the field pretty much 24/7. He's going to step in and be one of Anthony Richardson's top targets for this Colts offense. There's no absolutely elite wide receiver 1 on this team to take away targets from him. At the 108, we have Colston Loveland, who is now the starting tight end for the Chicago Bears. He was picked over Tyler Warren, but he was my tight end too for this draft class, so I have him going just behind Warren in this mock draft. I really like this pick for the Bears. I know it was somewhat of a controversial, polarizing pick, but we saw with their new head coach Ben Johnson, when he was in Detroit as the offensive coordinator, they thought it was pretty important to go out and get a very skilled pass-catching tight end in Sam Laporta, who was immediately integrated as a top target in the offense. I think the same could happen for Colston Loveland. As a prospect, he was a fantastic route runner with elite separation skills at the tight end position. I mean, he runs wide receiver-like routes, very skilled receiver with great hands. And with Cole Kmet still on the team at tight end, I think Kmet could take over as more of a blocking role, and Loveland could take that top receiving tight end role. So I don't have too many concerns about volume for him. And obviously Kaleb Williams, a very good quarterback to be playing with. I'm expecting him to take a leap in year 2 with a very strong offensive line and an elite supporting cast of weapons. So overall, this is a very solid landing spot for Colston Loveland. The draft capital is there. He's a fantastic receiving tight end. He's worth a late first-round pick in Dynasty. Next, we have Kaleb Johnson, running back for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And while his draft capital wasn't the best as a third-round pick, I really like this landing spot for him. He's a very efficient, physical runner with great contact balance, the ability to break tackles, and surprising speed as well. I think he has the upside as a prospect to take over as a starting running back at least midway through the season. I don't see Jaylen Warren as a top-tier running back that can be that workhorse. Johnson was my overall RB3 in this draft class, and he only slips down to my RB4 just because of the draft capital. Henderson was drafted higher, but I'm a big fan of Johnson. I think this is an awesome landing spot. He'll get the opportunity to compete for snaps right off the bat because Pittsburgh, again, doesn't have that elite starting running back in place, so he's got high upside to be a great player. Next, we have Quinshon Judkins, new running back for the Cleveland Browns. They had a huge hole at running back, and they filled it early in the second round, taking Judkins as the third running back off the board. Overall, I think Judkins is an awesome prospect. He's a very physical runner with great bursts of speed. He has great moves at the second level with a nasty stiff arm he can use. He's a good goal line back, but the big questions about him are his visions of the line of scrimmage and his long speed. The Browns countered this by taking Dylan Sampson in round 4, another rookie running back that could compete with Judkins for snaps. That's why I have Judkins, though he was their third running back drafted so low in my first round at the 110. But nonetheless, I like the landing spot. They needed a running back, and he's a very good prospect in my opinion. He was my RB5 in this draft class. I'm excited to see Judkins make some noise in Cleveland as their starting running back. Matthew Golden is at my 111, selected by the Green Bay Packers late in round 1. This wasn't my favorite landing spot, to be honest. Green Bay has a lot of very solid wide receivers. Their supporting cast includes guys like Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs, Dontavion Wicks, and now Savon Williams as well. I would have rather seen him go to a place where he was even the clear-cut wide receiver 2, like in Dallas, so he could have that easily defined role off day 1. But there are some volume concerns for Golden. How many targets is he going to get with that many wide receivers in Green Bay? Nonetheless, I think he's going to be the wide receiver 1 eventually. He's a dynamic player with good route running skills. He has great vertical threat with great hands down the field. He can high point the football very well, and he's a good separator. He's got the speed, obviously, to have good yards after the catch. And I think time will tell if this is a good landing spot for Matthew Golden. But nonetheless, they did invest a first round pick in him, so I think he's going to be a solid player. Next up at the 112, here at the end of my first round, I have Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver now for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And to be honest, this is one of the most confusing landing spots in the entire draft class, in my opinion. They already have Chris Godwin and Mike Evans, veteran wide receivers with proven production, but they also have Jalen McMillan, who was a mid-round pick last year in the 2024 NFL Draft, who had a very strong rookie year, especially down the stretch. Emeka Egbuka is a great prospect. He's very experienced, extremely well-rounded, and has played a big role in the Ohio State offense for a couple of years now. But receiver just wasn't the biggest need for Tampa Bay, and I think he's going into a crowded room where, yes, he could have value over time, and I think he already does have value. But it might take a while for him to even have a shot to earn that wide receiver 1 role, especially with Chris Godwin signing a 3-year extension this past offseason. Godwin obviously may not come back as the same player after that ankle injury that ended his season in 2024. I think this is a rich get richer type of move, but for fantasy purposes, this is just not a great landing spot for Egbuka. I think his talent may trump the landing spot at some point. He's a very good receiver prospect, like I said, very well rounded, a good athlete out of the slot. But at the 112, I think it's solid value, even though he is a great player, I just don't like the landing spot. Going over my biggest riser and faller for this round, biggest riser is Colston Loveland with that draft capital, being the 10th overall pick to Chicago. I do like the landing spot. He did rise up a couple spots in my rankings. And the biggest faller, like we just discussed, Emeka Egbuka. Don't love the landing spot in Tampa Bay. There's a lot of competition for targets there, and it may take him a while to have significant value in fantasy, but I still think he's worth the first round pick. Moving to my second round, we're going to go a bit faster here. We have Luther Burden III, Chicago Bears wide receiver, drafted in the early second round after a bit of a draft day slide out of round 1. Burden is a very versatile wide receiver. He can play on the outside, in the slot, even in the backfield. He's a great athlete with good hands, and I expect him to develop into a very solid wide receiver 2 or 3 for Chicago. Obviously, they already have Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, and Colston Loveland now, who's drafted there as well. So there is a ton of competition for targets, but he's a very good athlete, a good prospect, and I think if he develops, he could take over as maybe the wide receiver 2 at some point, but right now he is locked into that wide receiver 3 role for sure, and it seems like there are going to be a lot of mouths to feed in the Chicago offense, but I still think, because of how good of a prospect he was, he is worth an early second round pick. At the 202, another quarterback here, we have Jackson Dart, a new quarterback for the New York Giants. They traded back up for him. Didn't give up too much in the trade, I don't think, but Jackson Dart, because of that draft capital and because of Superflex, I would take him here at the 202 early in the second round. He's got an okay arm, decent rushing ability, but I'm not sure if he was worth a first-round pick. Time will tell. I think he maybe should have been a day 2 pick. But nonetheless, the Giants did trade up for him. They did feel strongly about him as a prospect over Shador Sanders, obviously. So because of that, I think he's worth an early second-round pick just because of that draft capital. He's going to have time, hopefully, to sit and learn behind Russell Wilson and Jameis Winston, 2 solid veteran quarterbacks that could teach him a lot about this offense. And I think with time, he could develop into a solid starting quarterback. And in Superflex, that's exactly what you need. Next, we have Jaden Higgins, former Iowa State wide receiver who landed in Houston. I think this is a very good landing spot. They did need a good wide receiver too, and Higgins, as a big physical presence with a large frame and decent athletic ability, I think he'll fit into that slot really well. They already have Nico Collins, obviously, to be their wide receiver 1 as a vertical threat. I think Higgins could be that reliable, large frame wide receiver with physicality, kind of a faster Michael Pittman Jr. in a sense, that can step in and contribute right away. I think that's their idea for him as well. Obviously, wide receiver Tank Dell won't be back anytime soon with that injury, so Higgins does have an opportunity to earn volume right away. He was one of my favorite wide receiver prospects in this year's class. I think he ends up with a good landing spot, and those two things combined make him an early second round pick for me. At the 204, we have R.J. Harvey, Denver running back, who was selected in the second round. Not a lot of people thought, including me, that he would be a second round pick, but they did make the move to take him, even over a guy like Kaleb Johnson, who I thought was maybe a little bit better of a prospect. But nonetheless, Harvey doesn't have a lot of competition for carries. Running back was one of the biggest needs for Denver, and whoever got drafted there, if they got drafted early, was going to be the starting running back anyways. So Harvey going to a good landing spot in an early round makes him a second round pick for me. He's an extremely explosive running back that can go 0 to 100 very quickly. He's dynamic, he's explosive, his burst is pretty insane. He's also built well as a running back, basically built like a bowling ball. I wouldn't be surprised to see Harvey earn significant volume off the bat as kind of the only guy in this Denver backfield at this point. I think he's got high upside moving forward with this elite landing spot in Denver, so look for him in the second round. Next, we have Jack Bech, a prospect I absolutely loved coming out of TCU. He landed in Las Vegas in the second round. I like this landing spot because I think he's the clear-cut wide receiver 2 right off the bat. They didn't have a ton of guys under Jacoby Myers, who did hit 1,000 yards last year. But Bech is a very well-rounded physical prospect who shined at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. It was pretty clear he was going to go on day 2. The question was the landing spot, and I think the Raiders was a pretty good spot to go. Obviously, they had a need. Bech is going to going to be a big, reliable wide receiver 2 with really strong hands and the ability to win in every part of the field and go up and snatch the football. So overall, a great prospect matched with a fantastic landing spot makes him worthy of a mid-second round pick. I think he's going to be awesome. Next up, we have Trey Harris, new wide receiver 2 for the Los Angeles Chargers. A prospect I didn't like as much as Besh, but an equally great landing spot in LA next to Ladd McConkey and Justin Herbert in this great offense. There may be a little bit of competition right off the bat for him to earn that wide receiver 2 role, with Quinshon Judkins and Mike Williams still being there. But Trey Harris is a solid prospect. He's a very fluid athlete with a physical frame as well. And if he's able to earn that wide receiver 2 spot, working on the outside with McConkey in the slot, he could be a solid presence for Justin Herbert in this passing offense. Moving on to Mason Taylor, tight end for the New York Jets. I think he was a very solid tight end prospect in what ended up being a very loaded and deep tight end class. Out of LSU, Taylor's a solid route runner, a good separator, and a good blocker as well, profiling him as an all-around starting tight end for an NFL team, and that's exactly where he went. He's got a high ceiling as a receiver with a solid route runner. He does well at the top of his routes to create separation, and also as a blocker, he's extremely physical at the line of scrimmage. So it made sense that the New York Jets, who had a needed tight end, selected him in the second round. With that draft capital, I think he's worthy of a second round pick in dynasty drafts. He has the upside to be the second receiver in this New York Jets passing offense. Next, we have a player who I really liked, who went to a really good landing spot for his role. That's Cam Skattebo, running back formerly for the Arizona State Sun Devils. He's now in the New York Giants with Tyrone Tracy. I think this could end up being a very good Thunder and Lightning duo backfield for New York. Obviously, they've taken their quarterback of the future in Jackson Dart, and they have the receiver in Malik Neighbors as their top-tier guy to make this a high-volume passing offense. But Skattebo in early round 4 was the perfect complement to add to Tyrone Tracy, who's a very good receiving back and very elusive as a runner. And Skattebo can be that power back with elite contact balance that can step in day one and contribute in both the running and the receiving game. But again, Skattebo, he's a big player, listed at 219 pounds, could provide the power needed in this New York backfield to make it a really good duo. I think this is a fantastic landing spot. He's going to fit this role perfectly in New York. I have Kyle Williams at the 209, is going to start a running wide receivers here, but he went to New England in the third round. Williams was flying up draft boards coming out of Washington State later in the pre-draft process after a solid Senior Bowl and a good combine. With the ball in his hands, he's ridiculously efficient after the catch, getting a ton of yards in the area, while also being a great athlete with good speed. He's a good separator, and he's very solid off the line with his releases. And I think this is a good area to draft him in the third round where you're looking to add some complementary receivers. He's going to be a good player to add into the mix. The Patriots surrounding Drake May with more protection and weapons is going to make this a more efficient offense, especially through the air. So Williams, who is a great yards after catch threat, I think is going to be a good wide receiver too in this offense for the moment. And I think he has the upside to take on a larger role later on. Next we have Jaylen Null, wide receiver at Iowa State, who also landed in Houston with his former teammate Jaden Higgins, one of my favorite storylines of the entire draft. Null is a guy who plays a lot of slot, also a little bit of the outside as well, who I think could be the wide receiver 3 for Houston alongside Nico Collins and his college teammate. He had a super productive Senior Bowl week in Mobile, causing him to fly up draft boards. His routes were really impressive, but beyond that, as a receiver, he can go up and pluck the ball out of the air. He's extremely athletic and fast down the field. He tracks the ball really well and can make some really spectacular catches on the outside and down the field. I think he's a high upside option for Houston, who obviously wanted to add more receivers and add some protection for Stroud as well, which similarly to New England could make their passing offense more efficient. So I think there's absolutely a spot for Null to contribute off the bat as a slot wide receiver for Houston in year 1 during his rookie season. Next we have at the 211 Terrence Ferguson, tight end for the Los Angeles Rams. A lot of people were surprised to see him go in the second round. However, he was one of my favorite tight end prospects in this entire class. I had the chance to talk to him down in Mobile as well, where he had a very impressive Senior Bowl, similarly to a lot of guys around this range. So some really good separating ability all over the field. He has very good hands as well and surprising yards after the catch ability for a tight end. He has extremely high upside. In Los Angeles, who needed a receiving threat at tight end, after trading back out of the first round, took Terrence Ferguson in the second. I think he has the upside to be their starting tight end immediately, get a decent amount of volume, but this is a good landing spot for Ferguson. Not a ton of teams needed a starting tight end, but he did go to one of the teams that really did. He was obviously one of the best tight ends at the NFL Combine, testing near the top of every single category. He looked to make an impact in year 1 in Los Angeles. Closing out my second round, I have Dylan Sampson, the new Cleveland Browns running back who selected in round 4. This was a bit of a confusing selection for Cleveland, who already took Quinshon Judkins in the second round, but it looks like they may be trying to create a Thunder and Lightning backfield, which we already mentioned several times in this video, in Cleveland. Sampson was a pretty dynamic runner with good speed at Tennessee, and he profiles well to be a complementary back to Quinshon Judkins, who does have that question about long speed. They also invested decent draft capital into getting him as an RB2, so I wouldn't be shocked if he gets good volume right off the bat, because they're really going to draft a back or running back in the 4th round if you don't intend on using him immediately with a running back you already drafted in the 2nd. So I think Sampson could potentially get enough volume to be a decent selection at the end of second rounds, where you're kind of just taking flyers on guys that you think could be decent. And he's definitely going up my running back rankings, because I wasn't really sure if he could ever be a starting running back, but going into a Cleveland backfield with another rookie, I think he can earn volume pretty quickly. My biggest risers for this round were Jackson Dart and RJ Harvey, just two guys that were selected earlier than a lot of people thought they would be. Dart obviously will have more long-term value, but Harvey, off the bat, should be the starting running back in Denver. And then my big faller was Luther Burden, just because he did slide in the real-life NFL draft, was selected in Chicago, and he could just start off as a wide receiver 3. At my 301, we're going for a high-upside pick in Jaden Blue, former Texas running back who landed with Dallas in round 5. Dallas really needed a running back and waited a long time to get one, but they did get a solid guy in Jaden Blue. Obviously, his biggest threat is as a receiver. He did have 6 receiving touchdowns this past year, and that was one of the biggest roles he filled for Texas, as well as being a solid runner. I think he could immediately split carries with Javonte Williams, who signed with Dallas this past year, and he has a solid floor with that ability as a receiver. He could at least contribute in that role right off the bat. So Blue is a good value pick in rookie drafts with some definite upside to be a long-term contributor in Dallas. Next up, we have Elijah Arroyo, new tight end for the Seattle Seahawks. This is a really interesting pick. Arroyo displayed himself to be an elite athlete at the Senior Bowl. He's listed at 6'5", 250 pounds, but even at that large size, he was torching guys on routes at the Senior Bowl in those one-on-ones. He looked extremely dynamic as an athlete, had decent speed as well, and was looking good as a separator all week in Mobile, and that skyrocketed his draft stock. This is definitely an interesting landing spot. They already have a couple decent tight ends in Noah Fant and AJ Barner, so it'll be very interesting to see if Arroyo can take over as the tight end 1, maybe not this year, but he can develop and maybe take over in the next couple seasons. And the big question mark with him was his health, with a couple lingering concerns that seemingly got cleared up in the pre-draft process, because he probably wouldn't have been selected so high if they weren't. But in Arroyo, you're getting a very good blocker and a very capable dynamic receiver as well. So he has an extremely high ceiling in Seattle, and he's worth an early 3rd round pick. Moving on to another Seattle Seahawk, we're going to have Jalen Milroe, one of the best athletes in the entire draft, who landed in Seattle in the 3rd round. Obviously, he's not going to be the starter for a while. They signed Sam Darnold to a decent contract, but he's going to have the chance to sit and learn behind Darnold in this Seattle offense. Milroe is one of the best, maybe the best athlete in this entire draft. His ability as a runner with elite speed and great power made it a staple of Alabama's offense. He also has a very strong arm with a great deep ball. The main issue with Milroe is that his skills kind of fell apart as a passer down the stretch of the season. He started to become more turnover prone, which caused Alabama to lose more games. And he wasn't a great passer in the short and intermediate area. He had trouble reading the defense. So there are some red flags with Milroe, but his ceiling as an athlete is absolutely undeniable. So Seattle taking him as a high upside quarterback too, and who knows, maybe he gets traded with a couple decent games under his belt, but at some point hopefully he will get his chance, and maybe, just maybe, he can develop into a decent NFL starter. Next, following the trends of quarterbacks, one of the most confusing picks in the entire draft in Tyler Show, Texas Tech quarterback, selected in the 2nd round, 40th overall by the New Orleans Saints. He's going to be 26 years old midway through the season, and while he's a decent prospect, I don't know why the Saints decided to draft a 25-year-old quarterback over a guy like Shador Sanders in the 2nd round. While yes, as a prospect, Show is on par with some of the other quarterbacks in this class, so I don't absolutely hate the pick. It was just very confusing because I think they could have gotten him later in the draft if they really wanted him that bad. There is a world where he could develop into their starting quarterback in the future, but him already being so old at 25 really makes me wonder if they could have gotten him later in the draft. Obviously, this is great for Show. He was selected early in the draft than many expected, and he has decent tools to maybe become a starting quarterback down the line. So for that reason, he's in my mid-2nd round, but a very confusing pick for New Orleans. Next, we have Bashel Tutin, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He kind of shot up in the pre-draft process because he posted the best time of any running back in the 40-yard dash this season, and again, this was a stacked running back class. So I kind of expect him to be selected around that late 3rd, early 4th round area. And that's where he went, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. But I'm kind of concerned with its landing spot for a couple reasons. First of all, I do think Jacksonville is going to be a passing offense with Liam Cohen as their new offensive coordinator. Tampa Bay's offensive tendency last season was to pass the football. I think they're going to be less of a running team in Jacksonville with Cohen as their new head coach. So right off the bat, that is one thing I'm concerned about. And secondly, it's a pretty crowded backfield in Jacksonville with Travis Etienne, who's coming off a disaster season, Tank Bigsby, who is extremely efficient and kind of took over for Travis Etienne in the later part of the season as a starter. Bashel Tutin also did struggle with fumbles during his college career, but Tutin was a good prospect that rose up during the pre-draft process and had a good week in Mobile at the Senior Bowl as well. So I like the draft capital they spent on him, but it probably will take some time for him to earn a big-time role in this Jacksonville offense, and I'm not sure if he will have the opportunity to take over as the starter anytime soon. Next up at the 306, we have, you guessed it, Shador Sanders of the Cleveland Browns, who was selected in the 5th round of the NFL draft after expecting to be off the board in the 1st. This was obviously one of the biggest storylines of the entire NFL draft. His draft slide was pretty much unbelievable. I think he should have been selected well before where he was. But I understand if there were some character concerns, especially after reports came out that he did very poorly in pre-draft interviews. If he really did come across as entitled or arrogant, I do understand his draft slide all the way to the 5th. But nonetheless, I think this is something that could fuel Sanders as he goes forward. He was a very good prospect. I thought he had a pretty high floor as a quarterback, and I expect him to win that starting job in Cleveland. Cleveland doesn't have the best supporting cast as far as wide receivers go, but they do have a couple of good tight ends in TreVeyon Henderson and Harold Fannin. Jarrett Hunter also had a good season last year, so if Shador does win the starting job, I think there's some hope for him there. At the 307, we have Elicia Manor to the Tennessee Titans. I think this is a very solid selection for Tennessee. Elicia Manor is a very high upside wide receiver. He's a big physical target for Cam Ward, and he excels in contested catch situations. The big worry with him were how reliable his hands are going to be. He did struggle with drops over the past couple seasons at Stanford, but I could see him being the wide receiver 3 long term for Cam Ward. I think he was a good value in the 4th round where Tennessee got him. Moving on, we have Harold Fannin Jr. with the next pick, who was selected in the 3rd by the Cleveland Browns. At Bowling Green, he was a very unique tight end prospect. He wasn't very good as a blocker, but where he made his money was as a receiver. He's a very good route runner, and after the catch, he's absolutely elite. And not only that, but he did post very good stat lines against quality opponents as well in Penn State and Texas A&M. He didn't test very well at the NFL Combine, which caused his draft stock to fall a little bit, but he was still a late day 2 pick, as I assumed he would be. Njoku is a great tight end, but I think Fannin was brought in to be his replacement. Not right now, obviously, because he's still great, but maybe over time. Obviously, I think he may be limited as a blocker, but as a receiver, he's one of the most dynamic of this entire class, and posted some historic numbers at Bowling Green this past season. I think he's got high upside. This is a good pick for Cleveland, I think, where they got him. He'll be a good pick in rookie drafts. Next up, we have Pat Bryant, who went to Denver in the 3rd round of the NFL draft. Another one of these receivers who had a really strong week at the Reese's Senior Bowl. Bryant is a good physical receiver with good route running ability and separation skills, and landing in Denver was a very good landing spot for him. They don't really have a wide receiver 3 right now. Cortland Sutton and Marvin Mims Jr. are kind of their top receiving threats. Evan Ingram at tight end is also going to command some volume. But I think Pat Bryant can step in and be the wide receiver 3 immediately. I think this landing spot takes him from a sleeper to a legitimate prospect in Dynasty. We have Jaylen Royals next at the 310, selected by the Kansas City Chiefs in the 4th round. I had some issues with Royals as a prospect, but I think the 4th round was really good value for Kansas City. I think he should have been a late day 2 pick at the very least. But the main thing for Royals was his blazing speed and ability after the catch. I think he can settle in as a wide receiver 3 for Kansas City and provide that alongside Xavier Worthy, who's another guy with elite speed. I think Royals was a better player than what he showed in the pre-draft process. He was struggling with a lingering injury from this past season. He is a dynamic player who will be a good complementary piece for Andy Reid in this creative Chiefs offense. At the 311, we have Isaac Tesla, new wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. Many expected Tesla to go late day 3, but it's obvious the Lions know something that we don't and selected him in the early 3rd round on day 2. I think he's pretty clearly going to be the wide receiver 3 for this offense, behind Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jamison Williams. I think he's also going to be behind tight end Sam Laporta in targets. But him being drafted so high does give him upside in Dynasty. He's a good vertical threat, and it's obvious the Lions liked him a ton. I think he's worth a late 3rd round pick in rookie drafts. It'll be worth seeing if he's able to carve out a role in this Lions offense. At the end of the 3rd round, we're going for upside, taking another quarterback in Will Howard, who landed in Pittsburgh. Will Howard was the national championship winning quarterback for Ohio State this past season, and Pittsburgh is one of the best landing spots any quarterback could have gone. But Will Howard, even as a 6th round pick, does have the opportunity to duke it out with Rudolph for that starting job. If he gets it, I think he has decent upside as a passer and as a runner, and if you're looking for a decent quarterback in Superflex to be a backup, Will Howard is not a bad selection at the end of 3rd rounds. I think you can get him even later in some rookie drafts. He has definite upside. My biggest riser for this group in the 3rd round was Tyler Show, obviously. Not a lot of people expected him to be selected in the 2nd. Because he flies at my draft rankings. And my biggest follower was Shador Sanders, who I assumed a late 1st or early 2nd round pick, selected in the 5th round. That drops him down to my 3rd round in rookie drafts. At the 401, unfortunately, one of my biggest followers, who I really liked as a prospect before the draft, was Devin Neal, selected in the 6th round by the New Orleans Saints. While the draft capital spent on him in the NFL draft does cap his upside a little bit, I still love him as a prospect, and I think this is a very good landing spot where he can compete for the running back 2 role almost immediately. He's a very patient runner with good physicality and vision. He may not be the best athlete in the world, but he showed he can be very efficient on a ton of touches at Kansas. and he can provide a good burst of speed, similar to a guy like Quinshon Judkins. I like him as a prospect. The landing spot is good. The only thing that concerns me is how late he was drafted. Next up at the 402, we have Woody Marks, drafted in the 4th round of the Houston Texans to be the backup running back for Joe Mixon. Marks is a decent pass-catching running back, which he showed at the Senior Bowl as a pretty solid route runner and production as a receiver at USC. I think if you're getting selected in the 4th round, you're going to be a backup running back anyways. And Houston with Joe Mixon is getting up there in years and might need to get replaced in a couple seasons. And Marks is in a good position to take away volume already. I think he's a solid prospect, but this landing spot is really what's selling him for me as a high upside selection in the late rounds of rookie drafts. Next we have Jordan James, a prospect I absolutely loved coming into the draft class, who went to San Francisco in the 5th round. Obviously, being in San Francisco, backing up a guy like Christian McCaffrey, who struggled with injuries over the past couple seasons, I think this landing spot is awesome. We've seen backup running backs in San Fran get some serious volume after Christian McCaffrey goes down with injury. As of now, it looks like Jordan James could be the running back 3 on the depth chart, but I think his physicality, contact balance, and vision as a runner could move him up the depth chart pretty early in his rookie season. I think he has the opportunity to earn carries pretty quickly. At the 404, we have Gunnar Helm, selected in the 4th round by the Tennessee Titans. He could be in the mix to be their starting tight end. Chigozie Okonkwo has been a solid tight end, but if they don't decide to extend or re-sign him, Gunnar Helm could be the long-term option at the position. He was a very capable receiver and blocker at Texas, so it makes sense that he could be the all-around tight end they've been looking for to fill that spot long-term. At the 405, we have Savon Williams, who ended up in Green Bay in the 3rd round. While he was a 3rd-round pick, I don't love the landing spot. Again, similar to what I said with Matthew Golden, Green Bay has a ton of wide receivers, and there's not a ton of room for targets there. I would have even liked if he went on day 3 to a different team. I think he has upside to work his way from maybe a kick returning role into a legitimate receiver. He's a ridiculous athlete who excels in contested catch situations. Ty Felton was selected in the 3rd round of the NFL draft by the Minnesota Vikings. After a very good career at Maryland, he works his way into a Minnesota offense that will allow him to compete with Jalen Nailor for the wide receiver 3 role. As a prospect, he's not the biggest guy in the world, but he has solid route running ability and good speed that could make him a good vertical threat at the next level. So it'll be very interesting to see how this depth chart shakes out after training camp. The 407 is going to be DJ Giddens, running back drafted by the Indianapolis Colts in round 5. Around this range, you're looking for running backs that are going to be very good handcuffs. Giddens was a player that I think should have been drafted maybe a little bit earlier, and is likely going to be the number 1 handcuff for Jonathan Taylor. If Giddens is thrust into the starting spot, I think he can shine. He has great elusiveness. He's a very quick runner. I think he was a value pick in round 5 for the Colts. The 408, I'm taking Taj Brooks, Cincinnati Bengals running back. The Bengals add yet another player to this backfield. Where Zach Moss did struggle in 2024, Chase Brown took over as the lead back. But I like Taj Brooks' blend of vision, speed, patience, and power. He was a guy I kind of started liking later in the draft process, but I think Cincinnati's a good landing spot for him, and he could maybe compete early in his rookie season. But he'll need to overtake Zach Moss as the RB2 first, but nonetheless a good landing spot. At the 409, we have Jarquez Hunter, running back from Auburn that was drafted to the Los Angeles Rams. He was selected a bit earlier than I thought he would be, in the 4th round. The only issue, though, is this running back is very crowded with Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, so he's not going to be rated as high for me as the other 4th-round picks. If he can work his way up the depth chart, even above a guy like Blake Corum, he has definite upside as a handcuff. Trevor Etienne at the 410 I think is a really good spot to go. He was taken early on in the 4th round, but similar to Hunter, is in a super crowded backfield with Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle. Etienne is a really good receiving back, runs great routes out of the backfield, and can torch linebackers. He's got great hands and can make some really impressive catches if he's given volume in the passing game. I think he's got decent upside, but needs to earn a spot on the depth chart first before he has any fantasy value above being selected in the 4th round. Bashard Smith of the Kansas City Chiefs is my 411. I really like the prospect, but him being selected in the 7th round isn't my favorite thing in the world when evaluating 4th-round pick in rookie drafts. He's a really good receiving back. He did move from the receiver position at Miami when he went to SMU to play running back, and with Isaiah Pacheco struggling with injuries in 2024, Smith could get some serious volume, especially as a pass catcher pretty early on. We have Ollie Gordon of the Miami Dolphins, selected in the 6th round. After being one of the best prospects in the entire college football landscape in 2023, he took a massive step back this past season. It'll take a lot for him to take carries over Devon Achane or Jalen Wright. He could be solid if given some chances on the goal line. My biggest riser for this round was Ty Felton, catching on with the Vikings in the 3rd round, and my biggest follower was Devin Neal, just because he was selected so late in the 6th round of the draft. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm Joe, and this is Dynasty Trading Room.